Finally, we can talk about the things that I really care about. Chocolate turtles. I care about chocolate turtles a lot. I do. I care about running. You know, you bullied me into running a marathon. I actually ran it. I appreciate that. And you know what else? I care about the Conference League. All right, on stream when we were picking these matches, I got a lot of who? Who are they? What's that? This is the way European football is supposed to feel. Bunch of random teams from all over the place that all happen to be on a hot streak at the same time, except because it's the knockouts. They can't continue that hot streak. That hot streak must come to an end at some point. And that point is going to be reached maybe in this round of 16. Because there's only 16 teams left. There's only 3 teams from power leagues. That means there's 13 teams from not power leagues. Shout out to Lens, who lost in qualifying. They didn't even make it to the group stage. Shout out to Heidenheim, who didn't make it out of the group stage from Germany. You just have Chelsea, Real Betis, and Fiorentina. Everybody else is from a different league, somewhere far asunder. Some leagues that are way down the coefficient ranking that are having all-time runs. New clubs, new players. That you get an opportunity to actually watch play in big, important matches, new environments. You get to watch matches all over Europe, and that whole part of it is awesome. From every part of the exposure and the growing of the game is awesome. The Conference League is just an absolute barrel of fun. And the fun started with Cercle Bruges against Jagiellonia. There were 2 teams from Poland with the opportunity to go through in this round. And Jagiellonia was probably the one that you were thinking was way out in front as the favorite. They had a 3-0 win at home against Cercle Bruges in the first leg. But Cercle Bruges came to play. They scored 8 minutes into this one to put the pressure on Jagiellonia. And then right out the start of the second half, they scored again. It was 3-2 for the last 40 minutes. Cercle Bruges wasn't able to find any solution after that. And Jagiellonia, despite getting dominated in this game, they only had 0.38 XG. They only had 5 shots to Cercle Bruges' 23. If you can pull out some voodoo magic and get a 3-0 win at home, it is enough. And they eliminated Cercle Bruges, knocking Belgium out of this competition in the Conference League and sending a team from the Polish League, Jagiellonia, to the quarter freaking finals, because Jagiellonia has been one of the hottest teams in this competition. I say it every time I talk about them. This was an uncomfortable game because they actually got completely dominated and completely outplayed, but they held on. They managed to actually hang on and get themselves a result. Speaking of teams hanging on, Paphos, they had a 1-0 lead. Team from Cyprus that managed to win 1-0 at home, going on the road against Djurgarden. So many different factors playing into this match. Paphos is kind of a newer club. They've got a new rich owner, right, trying to spin their way to the top. They survived a close shave against Ammonia, a fellow team from Cyprus in the previous round, in the playoff round, in order to get to this round of 16. But Djurgarden's got a more European pedigree. They definitely have more of a history. They've got more of an infrastructure that's going to build a more solid foundation of a team. The disadvantage for a team like Djurgarden in this particular situation is that they are not mid-season. They play a summer league in Sweden. So in March, they're just getting out of their preseason. They're just kind of getting going. They're not nearly as sharp as Paphos, and that was kind of evident early. They did, however, get a goal in the 35th minute in order to make it 1-0 to Djurgarden. That levels it up on aggregate going into the half. And then there was a second goal disallowed in the second half for Djurgarden before, and I highly recommend you watch this, in the 69th minute because it was sexy, a beautiful, soft line drive, seeing eye shot right into the corner from Stenson. Absolutely seductive shot to break open the tie. They would go on to score a third goal in front of an absolutely raucous crowd, even though they're not allowed to fill the stands. But I don't want to give the impression that Paphos got dominated here. I picked Djurgarden to win, if you couldn't tell, for all of the reasons that I already detailed, but Paphos was absolutely in this game. And you would make a very compelling argument that Paphos got screwed, that they actually ended up losing, especially losing 3-0. You look at this and you think Paphos is gone and to be forgotten. But I have a feeling in the Conference League, in the, wherever Paphos is going to end up next year, we might be hearing more from them. This feels like making the round of 16 in the Conference League is an introduction to a team in Paphos that is going to be around a little while, that is going to be bothering some bigger teams in European competition. But for now, Djurgarden was able to get to the result that I think a lot of people expected them to get to advance. This brings us to one of my favorite matches of the entire freaking tournament, honestly. Borac Banja Luka, a team from the Bosnian League that is not like a runaway first place team. Last time I checked the Bosnian League, they weren't even in first. Right, the Bosnian-Herzegovina League has, when you ask what their coefficient is, it basically says they don't have one. Right, I mean, they do, but it's that low. Right, Bosnia-Herzegovina does not ever have teams that make it this far. There isn't even one big European club in Bosnia and Herzegovina. There just isn't. They don't get out of the qualifying. They never get out of the qualifying. Not only did they get out of the qualifying, they're all the way in the round of 16 of this freaking competition. They're taking on an old historic club like SK Rapid Wien, one of the traditional big clubs in Austria, that while it is unusual for them to be in a European round of 16, it is not unheard of. People know who they are. They don't need me. Yeah, I don't need me to freaking explain who Borac Banja Luka is, where they come from. And yet, Borac Banja Luka got a penalty at home right at the death to equalize the first leg 1-1. And that brought us to this absolutely absurd match that was played in Vienna. Okay, Rapid Wien was the better team. Who gives a shit? This match was ridiculous. In the first 20 minutes, I think it was the first 30 minutes, Rapid Wien hit the crossbar twice. Rapid Wien had a shot at an open goal that somehow ended up sailing just over. And a couple of more chances that I'm sure I don't even remember. I mean, Rapid Wien was so all over the Borac Banja Luka goal, it felt completely inevitable that they would score. But it got to halftime, and you know what? We're still tied 1-1 on aggregate, 0-0 on the night, in front of a very lively crowd in Vienna. Great crowds in Austria. Packed house, good noise. And then all of a sudden, Borac Banja Luka, with its first shot on target in the entire match, across a volley that goes into the ground and just seems to fall like heaven's rain into the corner. Just like disgusting, but beautiful. Much the same way that this entire match was disgusting, but beautiful for Borac Banja Luka. They are the ultimate underdog. No team from Bosnia and Herzegovina could imagine in its wildest dreams it would be playing on this stage. Me be talking about it. Not for something foolish, not for something insane they did in their, but like CBS Sports is cutting a highlight with Borac Banja Luka in it. That's the point that they've made it to. And they take the lead with less than 30 minutes to go, and then they switch off. Just for a few minutes. Shot from just outside the box. Keeper's a little out of position, even though he played a brilliant match. And boom, 1-1. That was the only time that a Rapid Wien was able to break through. That was it. Every other chance was stoned, big saves, and this unsuspecting team managed to roll in and force extra time in the second leg against Rapid Wien in the last 16. Absurd. Impossible to imagine. The sort of thing that the Conference League provides. It provides a tournament that is just accessible enough that if a team can get hot and make all the right plays and, yes, get lucky, they can make a run that just kind of captivates an entire country, like Borac Banja Luka. The problem is extra time had to be played, and of course Rapid Wien did manage to score. Completely unsavable shot, well set up, beautiful curling effort over the top of the fingertips to the far post. But of course, in extra time, there were still wild exchanges, crazy saves that Borac Banja Luka had to put on just to keep it 2-1. Now, I'm going to show you the stats. I mean, look. It's just fun. This is just fun. This is just football, soccer in its purest form. It's nonsense. Everybody on both teams, everybody in the stands, everybody knows who the more talented team is, and yet the whole point of the sport is to put the ball in the net, and Borac Banja Luka nearly did that as many times as Rapid Wien. 3-2 on aggregate after extra time in the second leg, and what an effort from Borac Banja Luka. They were digging in and digging in and digging in. I mean, there was a point in the second half, Rapid Wien had like a 3-on-1 and somehow didn't score. It was actual sort of, make the 6-pointed star kind of devil worship to keep the ball out of the net shit that was going on. But it worked, and it was awesome. And it was in the pouring rain in Vienna. And I wish every, Conference League match was like this, where we had a David and a Goliath, and the David's really looking like they're going to win, right? Or they're giving them an absolute run for their money. Unfortunately, the David and Goliath in this story, it didn't really turn out that way. Although I don't really know which one I'm talking about, because Copenhagen was in the Champions League last year, and Chelsea wasn't. But Chelsea did win 3-1 on aggregate, 1-0 at home. I call this a taking care of business result. You just had to not blow it. You did the hard part. You went on the road and got the win against Copenhagen. Keep the match under control. Don't blow it. They kept the match under control. They conceded just one shot on target, and they didn't blow it. Copenhagen going to be disappointed, but a very difficult draw for them to try and deal with. Fiorentina against Panathinaikos. Brilliant match in the first leg in Greece. The Panathinaikos won 3-2. The Greek league, one of those leagues that with the Conference League coming out has emerged. Olympiacos won the damn thing, right? This is a league that is starting to produce teams that feel comfortable going blow for blow with teams from top 5 leagues like Fiorentina. But Fiorentina was better. They were way better in this leg. Moise Kean could have had a hat trick. In case you were wondering where he is, he's on Fiorentina. He could have had a hat trick. He ended up scoring the third goal to ice it. It was 3-0 at one point. Madragora started this off early. It was raining everywhere. But in the pouring rain in Italy, a long-range banger. Panathinaikos spiced this up late with a penalty that cut it to 3-1 and obviously 5-4 on aggregate, if you're good with your quick math. But it wasn't enough. And this match was never particularly close. Fiorentina actually did a very, very good job of seeing Panathinaikos away. They got a very late red card, but it wasn't something that really affected the match. Fiorentina was just the better team. Remember, this XG includes a penalty, while Fiorentina's does not. They were just the better team. They deserved the win. Panathinaikos couldn't quite bring the same Agent of Chaos vibe that they were able to bring into the last one. The other Polish team, Legia Warsaw against Molde. Molde from Norway trying to make it into a quarterfinal, joining Bodo Glimt in the Europa League. The problem is they were only up 3-2 against Legia Warsaw. Now, they should have been up by more. Molde had a 3-0 lead, 3-0 in the first leg. But Legia Warsaw on the road pulled 2 of those goals back and honestly threatened to equalize. And now they come home and they're actually able to overturn that result rather comfortably. And by comfortably, I mean in extra time. But, still, they got the goal in the first half. This one was level on aggregate for a long time. Extra time, Legia Warsaw able to grab the winner. This is an RIP in peace to one of the weirdest teams in this tournament, and there is a little nugget about this particular match. This was a revenge tour. Molde managed to beat Legia Warsaw 6-2 on aggregate last year in the Conference League playoff. We have like a burgeoning rivalry between these two teams. So this time Legia Warsaw is able to go in, turn the tables, get the last laugh. They got it done in extra time. And then Molde, because they got a red card in the playoff round when they beat Shamrock Rovers of Ireland on penalties, they got a red again. Just to top off the chaos that Molde seems to be traveling with. But that means we have 2 Polish teams. 2 Polish teams that have made the quarterfinals of the Europa League. 25% chance we have a Polish champion. Then there's Real Betis and Vitória Guimaraes. I was so excited for this one. It was a 2-2 draw in Spain. Betis took the lead twice. Guimaraes came back and tied it both times. This game was a snoozer. Real Betis just blew them out. Just flattened them. 2 goals in the first 20 minutes. Guimaraes felt a little lifeless. They weren't creating a lot of chances towards the Real Betis goal. They were getting a good amount of possession, and then they started the second half well, putting good match control, putting pressure on the Real Betis goal, and they get hit with one counter, and guess who scores? Antony. Of course. He is but undeniable. And then he turned in an absolutely brilliant assist for Isco to score a 4th goal, and all of a sudden the Portuguese team that managed to draw on the road loses 4-0 at home. Riddle that to me. Real Betis, Fiorentina, and Chelsea through to the quarterfinals. So the 3 big league teams looking like, well, they're going to try to reclaim the Conference League for the top 5 leagues after Olympiacos stole it away last year. That leaves one more match. The match that probably is the thumbnail of this video. The match that produces unbelievable amounts of chaos and keeps one team's dream alive. And that team is called Celje. Celje managed to win 1-0 at home in the first leg against Lugano, one of the better teams in Switzerland. Lugano is at least in contention for the Swiss title this year. I believe they're third or fourth in the league right now, depending on when you're watching this. Unfortunately for Lugano, they can't play at their home stadium, so they have to play in Thun for European matches. So it's not this normal raucous environment you're getting in most of these matches. But they're coming home. They're down 1-0 to Celje, but Celje is fifth in the Slovenian league. This is a league that is, obviously never sent anybody to the quarterfinal of a European competition before, but even if they are going to send a team to the quarterfinal of a European competition, it's not going to be Celje. It's going to be like Olimpia Ljubljana, teams that are a little more familiar with this stage. But Celje is here. They're the one that earned this spot. They've shithoused their way to this point, and let me tell you, this match was nonsense. 21 minutes in, Lugano's able to score its first goal. Ball's kind of bouncing around a little bit. They chip it across. It's tapped in. And you're thinking, all right, 70 minutes for Lugano to show its quality, to show why the Swiss league is top 15, sometimes even top 12, 11 in coefficient in Europe, right? When you got Basel or Young Boys playing at a particularly high level, they can drag that up, right? Lugano is competing against those types of teams at a domestic level. Celje doesn't really have that ability to, test themselves. But then all of a sudden, Celje scores. Really wonderfully taken. Stutter stepping shot through the legs of the defender off the inside of post and in. Celje's feeling really good about this. All of a sudden, they put themselves up 2-1 on aggregate. But then they just completely evaporate. Literally, while the commentator was still talking about the fact that Celje had just scored to go ahead, Lugano scored. Just ball over the top, boom, cross in. Defense falls apart completely. And then 2 minutes later, Dos Santos is in on goal at an angle, and he buries it. The Swissman, and that completes the Swiss turnaround. They go from down 2-1 to up 3-2 on aggregate, just like that going into the half. Now, most teams would have folded. That is catastrophic. That is like a disastrous display. But they didn't fold. They kept their nose in the fight. And then they found a goal to equalize. And let me tell you, it meant a lot to the 40 traveling fans that had made it up to Switzerland from Celje. They were right behind the goal where the second goal was scored. There was this little pocket of dudes going absolutely nuts. But it was a nice little finish through the goalkeeper's legs, just kind of a toe poke where you beat the goalkeeper to it and get it underneath him. And that ties it up. And you're thinking, wow, that must have been it. They held on to it and were able to force penalties. No. Lugano scored again. 80th minute. Lugano scores. Now it's 4-3 on aggregate in favor of Lugano. 4-2 on the day. We are switching between potential results all over the place. And then this happens. It is obviously something I'm not going to be able to accurately describe. So this is the violation, right? It's a challenge. They're both going for the ball, and the defender goes to clear it, and then he just gets studs right in the inside of the knee of the attacking player. Now, obviously, this would go down as a reckless challenge here. And eventually, after a very long review, it is not only given as a penalty, it is given as a red card as well, which neuters Lugano's ability to try and put pressure on Celje in extra time, which is ideal. Now, the penalty is well taken, high into the right, not Harry Maguire in the corner, but it is certainly good enough in order to force extra time. So shout out to the guy that scored it. And then, in the 97th minute, Celje scores. They score to take the lead. The ball falls on the outside of the box, and it's volleyed so sweetly that any deflection at all sends it into the back of the net, and it gets that deflection. And Celje jumps out to a 5-4 aggregate lead in extra time in Switzerland. Somehow also in the rain, because all of these matches were happening in the rain. It was just raining on the entire freaking continent for some reason. But the story was not over. Ousmane Doumbia, a 32-year-old from Ivory Coast, subs in with 102 minutes played for Lugano. And lo and behold, he catches a sweet volley from 16 yards out, weaves its way through a crowd, doesn't take a sniff of a deflection, and heads right into the back of the net. Down a man, gorgeous finish by the sub Ousmane Doumbia, and penalties. So the underdog that had got this huge lucky break with the bad foul and the penalty and then scores again now ends up in penalties, and somehow it's Lugano that's feeling lucky to be there. Although they didn't freaking show it. because the first guy stepped up and missed the goal. The second guy, the captain, Renato Stefan, it was actually a really good save on him. So I don't really blame him as much. But the fact, you can't score an 118th minute equalizer, a man down, and then brick your first two penalties. They only scored one. Simignani, the guy that missed to end this shootout, he skied it. They only hit the target 50% of the time. It was a nightmare from the penalty spot for Lugano at home. They only forced Celje to take 3 penalties, all of which were good, by the way. They handled their business. And now Slovenia's got its first ever team in the quarterfinal of a European competition. And that is awesome. And even if they do get blown out in the next round because they're playing against Fiorentina and because they finished 21st out of the 24 teams that qualified for the knockouts in the league stage, they earned the right to get blown out. If Lugano or Apoel, the other two teams that definitely have bigger brands, bigger names, and particularly in Apoel's case, more European experience, they should have beaten Celje, but they couldn't. But they didn't. Celje won. And who cares how the domestic season's going? That's what Tottenham and Manchester United are saying too. They're getting it done in Europe. They are. And they've gotten it done again in an absolutely absurd 5-4 shootout that made it 5-5 on aggregate. It was 5-4 in the second leg. The matchups are Real Betis against Jagiellonia, so we're about to find out which of the Jekyll and Hyde from Jagiellonia we're going to get. Celje, like I said, takes on Fiorentina. The other side of the bracket is Chelsea against Legia Warsaw, so put up or shut up time for the Polish teams. But Legia Warsaw did finish 7th in the table, so they are in with a chance. And then Djurgarden and Rapid Vienna is the kind of choose-your-fighter random team in the semifinal. Both of those teams will clearly be looking at that as a huge opportunity, while the dream for Celje, it lives on. And if you get a chance to watch the extended highlights of this match, I really recommend it because it's one of the best matches that's going to be played in Europe in a long time.